The I'm Thankful Network, radio for inspiration, education, and collaboration. Show host and creator Sue Lundquist has the endless energy, compassion, and charisma to carry her mission. This mission of positive change and communication, while also creating a maintenance tool within a safe environment. Sue Lundquist and the other positive changing hosts for living a life of contribution. Weekly Monday through Friday, 9 to 10, or streaming live at I'mThankful.com.
Good morning, everyone. Excuse me. My goodness.
Little frog there, you got it?
I know. Thank you, Benny.
Ribbit.
You're listening to Shauna Home on the East Shell Wisdom Radio on the I'm Thankful Network. And East Shell, as I always say, is the Mayan cosmic mother. She is all about the divine feminine wisdom, which I like to call the grandmother wisdom. So my show focuses on aspects of that, healing and healing modalities, traditional foods, herbs, Mama Earth, blood mysteries of Maiden Mother Crone, which we'll be visiting later this month. And today, I have, once again, Dr. Gerstmar on my show. Dr. Gerstmar is a naturopathic doctor in downtown Redmond, and one of these doctors who, in my opinion, is just fully conscious and really groks the necessity of real food and the effect it has, the medicinal effect that it has on the body, and is just like a walking encyclopedia. He's so fascinating, and he's just an amazing doctor. And then later in the show, we're going to have one of his patients here today because we're going to talk today about gluten intolerance. And so many people have this issue. And what's really upsetting is that you'll have gluten intolerance, and then it will lead to a whole host of other illnesses if it's not addressed. And it is entirely possible to heal the gut, but you need to know how to do that, and it takes time. So Dr. Gerstmar can absolutely speak to that, and then we'll have a patient of his, Nicole Allen, in a little bit, who went through the mire of regular MDs who unfortunately aren't really treating this. They're not really sure how exactly. And just till she finally found Dr. Gerstmar, and she's doing beautifully. So, Dr. Gerstmar, welcome.
Thank you so much, Shauna, for having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you here. So let's talk about this and first talk about, so what is gluten intolerance?
Sure. So, most people are becoming aware of celiac disease. Now we're hearing more about it. It's coming out more in the mainstream media. People are becoming aware, and we've had some celebrities who've published their stories about dealing with celiac, and so it's becoming more common. But the issue here to understand is there's a spectrum. So there's a spectrum from mild to very severe. And celiac disease is at the very end of that spectrum, is the most severe reaction to consuming wheat. It's actually an autoimmune disease where the presence of gluten, which is a protein within wheat, also barley and rye as well are included in that. And some of the more artisanal wheat varieties like spelt, kamut, and a few others, emmer and einkorn, if people are aware of those, also contain gluten. So people will say, well, I eat spelt, it's not really an issue, and it actually is an issue. So celiac disease would be the most extreme manifestation of gluten intolerance. Of gluten intolerance, correct. And we really learned about it after World War II. And I don't remember the country, to be honest. I think it might have been Denmark. But they found after severe rationing, because of World War II, that kids who were failing to thrive, who were doing really poorly before, suddenly became normal and started to do okay when the rationing occurred. And then after the war ended and the rationing disappeared, all of a sudden those kids started doing badly again. And some intrepid researchers were curious and were tracking it down and figured out that it was actually wheat had become a really scarce commodity in the country during rationing. And so a lot of these kids just, their parents couldn't afford it, they couldn't get it, and so they weren't having it, and they were doing better. And then when suddenly it became available again, those kids could get it, and they found that they suffered again. And so it led to these classic symptoms of what was considered celiac disease, where little kids with lots of diarrhea who failed to thrive, they weren't gaining weight, they were showing nutrient mineral deficiencies, lots of stomach aches and other gastrointestinal symptoms. And it led people to believe that celiac disease was confined to gastrointestinal symptoms. So if you weren't a little kid and you didn't have these big obvious diarrhea, stomach upsets, all of these kind of things focused on your digestion, well, then you couldn't have celiac disease. Unfortunately, that's just not true. And right now we're at a stage where the science of celiac disease has outpaced the clinical understanding. So, for instance, a few months back, we just learned that in celiac disease, autoimmune disease, so the body is producing antibodies against its own tissue, against the intestines that are driven by gluten. But we also found out they're producing, some of them at least, are producing antibodies against their own bones. And so early osteoporosis is definitely a symptom of celiac disease. And we thought it used to be because they couldn't absorb very well, because their digestive system was so wrecked, that they weren't absorbing their calcium and their other minerals and their other vitamins, and so they couldn't build bones. But now we understand, at least in some patients with celiac, there's actually antibodies that are preventing the formation of bone, even if they're getting adequate vitamins, minerals, and nutrients in their diet. So celiac disease, very, very serious disease, very underreported. For every person in the United States today who is diagnosed with the disease, the straight-out statistics from the CDC say that 50 people have it and are undiagnosed.
Okay, I've a question about that.
Sure.
Because I know also that for a number of years, probably since World War II, that or before, with all the like the white flour and the white bread, the white sugar, that people stopped like souring their grains, which is something that traditionally around the world we used to do. Isn't that a part of it? Because we're trying to digest grains that have not been soured anymore, so they've not been properly prepared.
Right. Well, it honestly is a complex issue, and we don't have all of the answers. There was a fascinating study done on Air Force recruits where they took their blood in the 1960s and they froze it and saved it. And they took that blood and tested for celiac disease and compared it to Air Force recruits who had just recently joined the Air Force, and they found a dramatic increase in the incidence of celiac disease. So something is going on. The amount of celiac disease that we're seeing is a lot more than in previous times. So people always say, my grandmother ate wheat.
Right.
She didn't seem to ever have any problem with it. And, it was the 50s, and she ate all the white bread and white flour. So, I absolutely agree with you, and we'll talk here in a minute about how the traditional methods of preparation seem to do a great deal in rendering wheat a much more edible food. We still have we'll cover that. We still have some issues, but there definitely seems to be something going on. And the piece of it is celiac disease, as we understand it, requires a certain genetics. So a certain susceptibility to develop this autoimmune disease. And depending on what resources you look at, in Caucasians, they're suggesting about 30% of people carry the genes that mean they can get celiac disease. Okay. So we'll talk about this again. How can we test? And you can test genetics and look at your genetics and say, do you have the genes that suggest that you could have celiac disease? But the other most important point is just having the genes doesn't mean you will have celiac disease. It means you have the potential to develop celiac disease. And my answer, and I don't have proof for this, but my answer, why do so many people now, more people now, have celiac disease than they did 50, 60, 80 years ago? It would be because our environment is such that it's triggering those genes to turn on and people develop it. But I don't want to get stuck in celiac disease because, again, it's a spectrum, right? And celiac disease is the most extreme manifestation. If you want the worst reaction you can get to consuming wheat and gluten, that's celiac disease. Okay. But there's instead of just being black or white, so what we see in the conventional community right now is, well, you have celiac disease or you don't have celiac disease, and therefore you can't have any kind of reaction to wheat.
Right, unless you have celiacs, period, at the end.
Right.
Okay.
Right, and we know that that's just not what most of us out there are seeing, that there's this spectrum, and, we test for celiac disease, and many people we see who have reactions to wheat don't have celiac disease. So this can range from really mild symptoms to, pretty severe symptoms that might suggest you have celiac disease, but when we test, you don't. And so often I ask people to do a 30-day removal of gluten and wheat from their diet. Mm-hmm. One of the most common allergenic foods, I have to say, that we see both clinically, by lab testing, everything, one of the foods that people react the most to is going to be modern wheat. And so I ask people if they'll do a 30-day removal. Those that get on board and decide to do it, I would say between 80 and 90% of those people see a positive change. Mm-hmm. Some people, it's kind of mild. They say, I just feel better. I can't pinpoint it per se, but I feel better. Other people, it's like night and day difference. And they're just, it's fantastic and spectacular for them. So, just clinically, we see and we see a lot of people displaying these reactions.
Yeah, I have to say, even for myself personally, when I eat white bread, I always say my stomach blows up like a cake in the oven. I just cannot deal with it. And but I don't have celiac. I'm really in great health.
Right.
Yet clearly I just don't handle the white flour. We're going to take a break. We're here talking about gluten intolerance with Dr. Tim Gerstmar of AspireNaturalHealth.com. See you in a minute. Hi, I'm Shauna Holm, host of East Shell Wisdom on the I'm Thankful Network, Wednesdays live from 9 till 10 a.m. My book, East Shell Wisdom, 7 Teachings from the Mayan Sacred Feminine, is a love letter to women. East Shell is the Mayan cosmic mother, and her messages in this book encourage women to open to their true beauty through simple rituals of self-love and self-care. Wise woman author Susan Weed says of this book, quote, "If you dare to read it, you will be swept up in an astonishing inner adventure that will empower you deeply. The words of the grandmother's song echo in Shauna's words." End quote. This is a beautiful book to gift yourself and the women you love. It's available on Amazon.com and my website, www.shaunahome.com. ShonaghHome.com. My family has had cats for years, and every so often, the inevitable happens and one of them has an accident on the carpet. We all know how difficult it is to get rid of cat urine odors, but I have found the best product out there. Kids and Pets Stain and Odor Remover. Kids and Pets gets rid of urine odors permanently. It makes stains disappear, and it even works on the mattress if your child wets the bed. And what I love about Kids and Pets is that it's made entirely of enzymes, which means it's safe and non-toxic, no harmful chemicals, and it's a cruelty-free product. You can use Kids and Pets on carpets, fabric car seats, furniture, and your clothing. In fact, I was able to remove blue food coloring from a cotton blazer I thought I'd never wear again. Kids and Pets removed it easily. I am so glad I found this product because I am very careful about not bringing toxic chemical cleaners into my home. So try Kids and Pets for yourself. You will be thrilled. And look for them on Facebook. The Weston A. Price Foundation was created to put forth the research of Dr. Price, whose meticulous study of healthy cultures around the world has given us a foundation for traditional foods that promote vibrant health. The foundation is dedicated to restoring nutrient-dense foods to the human diet through education, research, and activism. The Weston A. Price Foundation supports organic and biodynamic farming, pasture feeding of livestock, community-supported farms, honest and informative labeling, and prepared parenting and nurturing therapies. You can join a local Weston A. Price chapter to attend monthly meetings and learn about these healing foods and practices. Creating community around healing foods is what Weston Price is all about. Check out their website, www.westinaprice.org. It's a virtual encyclopedia of information. Join the foundation and receive their stunning quarterly journal, Wise Traditions. Everybody, welcome back. You're listening to Eashell Wisdom Radio with Shauna Home on the I'm Thankful Network. And we are talking today with Dr. Tim Gerstmar, naturopath here in downtown Redmond. And we are discussing gluten intolerance and everything that goes with that, which is not fun.
No, and huge topic. I mean, we won't be able to do justice to the whole spectrum of gluten intolerance because you could talk like 8 hours on everything that's involved. But we'll really try and hit the salient points today. So if people are thinking, might this be an issue for me? What are next steps? And we'll talk about some of the common foods that contain gluten. A lot of people think they're doing gluten-free, and they're really not. So the big point right now is spectrum. So there is celiac disease. It's a real disease. It's very serious. It needs to be taken very seriously. People with uncontrolled celiac have about a 70-fold increased risk of intestinal lymphoma. So that's cancer. If it's untreated, suffer from early osteoporosis, really take years off their life. And so, you know, if you have a relative who's been diagnosed with celiac disease, you really owe it to yourself to get it checked out. And, you know, again, talking about symptoms, the statistics, again, are that a good percentage, and I wish I had the exact number for you, and I can post it up on my Facebook page a little later today if people want to check that out, or they can email me for it as well.
And yet to interject, for the Dr. Gerstmar's Facebook page is Aspire Natural Health. You can find that on Facebook.
Right. Thanks so much. But a significant percentage, and like I said, I'll dig up the numbers and get them posted, have no symptoms at the time of diagnosis. So that means they don't have those common, all the diarrhea, gas and bloating, you know, abdominal pain, all the kind of intestinal symptoms that people get. Things that need to be, that are supposed to trigger screening and don't often include autoimmune diseases of most stripes and shades. So if you do have an autoimmune disease, most particularly type 1 diabetes or autoimmune thyroid disease, called Hashimoto's or Graves' disease. Mm-hmm. Big triggers, but really any autoimmune disease, it's worth taking a look at.
So if you have those autoimmune disease, get checked for celiac, is what you're saying? Okay.
Right. I highly recommend it. If you're suffering from early onset osteoporosis, mm-hmm. so if you're, you know, a woman in her 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you know, and you're suffering, your doctor says you have osteoporosis, mm-hmm. really, in my opinion, worth getting screened for celiac disease because if you don't take care of that, you know, you can do they'll prescribe Fosamax or Boniva or some of these other guys for you. And you know, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm in that it helps like a tiny bit, but it's not really going to take care of the problem for you. Other things, infertility issues. So couples who are having issues with infertility, before you jump to in vitro, spend tens of thousands of dollars going through, you know, a pretty rigorous process. Screen first for celiac disease, both in the man and the woman. You know, if it's an issue and you take care of it, a lot of times fertility is restored. So just a few, and there's a handful more. Again, I can post them up later for people to look at.
That's huge.
But things to be thinking about. Mm-hmm. So it's not just about symptoms. People say, well, I don't have diarrhea. I don't have any problems with food. Mm-hmm. You know, and it makes it this big thing. So in medicine, we talk about a few diseases that are called the great imitators. So because they manifest in so many different ways. And the classic used to be syphilis. Mm-hmm. People would, before the advent of antibiotics, syphilis was a serious problem for people, of course, sexually transmitted infection. Mm-hmm. But it manifests in so many different ways that it wasn't just like X symptom equals Y disease. Right. It was this whole list. And so another one is lupus. So now also we're looking at things like Lyme disease and gluten intolerance, specifically celiac, is another one of those. So people tend not to believe me when I say, well, this could be a gluten reaction you're having, because it can be so nebulous. And that's where the power of really doing a 30-day elimination of gluten from your diet can be so enlightening. I mean, you don't have to go to the doctor to do it. You can do it under your own control. You can track your symptoms and the changes you see in your health and well-being. And in a sense, it's cheap. I mean, you don't have to, there's no supplements to buy. There's no programs to do particularly. It can be a change in diet. And so that segues into another piece. So wheat and gluten are so common in our society today. Pretty much every cheap food that you're going to buy on the shelf, all the packaged products, boxes, bags, cans, have gluten in them.
So people are being bombarded by gluten.
Right, and that's a theory. Maybe that's why we're seeing more of these reactions, is because it's not just in breads, cookies, candies, pastries, these kind of things that people think, oh, that's made with wheat. But wheat is such a versatile piece of chemistry to the modern food processing industry, the companies, that they tear it apart and then use bits and pieces of it.
Oh, and cereals too.
Well, right. Yeah. And in places you don't even expect. So, gravies. In most places thickened with wheat. So people will be like, well, I'm not eating. So let's talk here. If you're trying to avoid gluten, obviously anything made with wheat or flour, typically, unless you're going to go out of your way and get some of the newly, now more available gluten-free flours and baking mixes, can be a safe choice if you're trying to avoid gluten. But if it's not specifically labeled made with that, you need to assume anything made with flour. So again, bread's big one, pastas, cookies and other pastries, donuts, and again, anything made with flour is going to contain gluten in it. Because again, we're looking at wheat, which is the primary thing. Rye, not used a lot in the mainstream, unless rye bread is basically the place I see it. And barley, not used a lot, particularly except in things like beers, of course, which contain both wheat and barley malt.
Right.
Right. So beer is definitely an issue for people. They are producing now some sorghum beers. There are a handful of sorghum beers that are gluten-free, and one I just heard about. I have no affiliation whatsoever with the company, but there's an English company called St. Peter's, which supposedly is making a really nice gluten-free beer. I haven't tasted it, but I've heard good things about it, so it's kind of on my list of things to try. Some people like the sorghum beers and some don't, but definitely, unfortunately, there's no Guinness or or anything like that if you're avoiding gluten. But that's another piece. So, I mean, so you say, okay, no breads, no pastas for me. I'm not eating gluten. But then if you're drinking beer, you are eating gluten.
Right.
Soy sauce is another really common one, unless you have a tamari wheat-free soy sauce.
Okay.
Soy sauce contains gluten. So again, people are like, oh, I'm doing so good, I'm avoiding it, and yet they're getting it in their soy sauce. And so if you really want to avoid gluten, the simple answer is don't buy anything in a box bag or can, which is healthier for you anyways. But if you are, you need to become a label reader. You really have to take the time, look at the labels, and scan them. And, there's some great sites, again, no affiliation whatsoever, but celiac.com has nice lists of ingredients. You can go to their unsafe food lists, which I send people to quite often, and it's this long list of these fractionated pieces of wheat and gluten that appear in processed food, and you need to have a handle on that, basically, if you're really going to do a gluten-free. The other piece is medications and supplements. So gluten is used as a filler. So a lot of medications out there that people are taking have gluten in them.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So it makes it really challenging. Again, you're doing so well. You're avoiding all your obvious sources of gluten. You're a careful label reader. You're not drinking your beer, eating your wheat-containing soy sauce, gravies that have been thickened with flour and stews and all those kind of things. And you're really watching it, but, you're on medications because you need to be. And you need to watch and see if those are containing gluten. If they are, you might have to talk to a compounding pharmacy and have the medication specially compounded in a gluten-free base. So,
and they can do that?
They can do that.
Okay, that's good to know. Great.
Right. So compounding pharmacies, there are a handful. We're very lucky here in Seattle to have a number of them. They do great work. So if that's an issue for you, again, you can find resources on the internet. I don't have one that comes to mind immediately. I know they're out there. You can check some of your medications and see all the things that are considered inert ingredients, binders, fillers, and everything else, and gluten, can be involved with that. The other piece is supplements. So if all the better supplement companies are going to prominently display on the bottle contains no gluten, no dairy, no preservatives, no colorings, no blah, blah, blah. They're proud about that fact. So if you don't see that listed, if you grab your supplement and you flip it around and you look through the label and you don't see it prominently displaying there, usually at the bottom, this contains no gluten.
Right.
It probably, you need to assume that it does contain gluten.
Okay.
And that's that's one of the advantages of going with the higher end supplements versus some of the bargain basement supplements you can get.
Oh, yeah.
Just like anything in life, if you buy the cheapest thing, you don't expect it to be a very good quality.
Well, you get what you pay for.
Right.
I tell people that all the time.
Right. And so fundamentally, food, you want the cheapest food. You're not going to get the quality content, the vitamin, mineral, nutrient content, the freshness, the flavor.
Right. And ultimately, it's going to cost you a fortune in healthcare down the road because it is cumulative.
Right.
So, okay, so this is great for those of us who just know we have issues with gluten.
Right.
And then for those who are who do have celiacs,
Right.
then by removing all of this,
Right.
that's going to certainly help them manage their celiacs.
Well, certainly. So the issue with wheat, and we'll touch on a little bit more in a second, but celiacs in particular causes dramatic and serious damage to the intestinal tract. Like we have these little, if you remember your high school biology, we have these little fingers in our intestinal tract called villi, which help absorb food. And if celiac disease is left untreated, all those villi are destroyed.
Yeah, and so then you can't absorb any of the nutrients from your food.
Right.
We're about ready to take a break. We'll take a break. You're listening to eShell Wisdom Radio on the I'm Thankful Network. This is Shauna Home. We'll be back in a few minutes. If you are ready to change your life in a truly profound way, then I invite you to meet Elisa Silling, founder of Awake in Joy. Elisa is a gifted healing practitioner here in the Seattle area. She is a life coach, hypnotherapist, and spiritual guide. Elisa can induct you into your highest potential, helping you to overcome personal limitations, fears, anxiety, and stress. Working with Elisa, you will align with your life's purpose. Clients have experienced greater clarity and a sense of personal empowerment that has helped them create abundance on every level. Awake in Joy offers personal healing sessions, classes, and retreats. Sessions may be in person or by phone. Are you ready for a personal transformation? Check out Elisa's website, www.awakenjoy.com. If you're thinking of doing a cleanse to restore health to your digestive system and bring your body back to balance, you need to check out European Rejuvenation Center in Factoria. European Rejuvenation Center is the place to go for colon hydrotherapy, endermology, and Swedish massage. They offer the Libby system for colon hydrotherapy, which is more effective than regular colonics for removing unwanted waste from the gut and assisting your body to return itself to a state of balance. Endermology originated in France and works directly to help remove cellulite. In addition, it stimulates lymphatic flow, helping the body to remove toxins. Swedish massage promotes relaxation and well-being. Owner Selena Lewandowski is knowledgeable and compassionate. Selena will assist you in your goals to bring your body back to balance. Mention this ad and receive $20 off your first appointment. Call 206-271-0041 or check out their website, EuropeanRejuvenationCenter.com. Hi, I'm Shauna Home, host of eShell Wisdom on the I'm Thankful Network, Wednesdays live from 9 till 10 a.m. My book, eShell Wisdom, 7 Teachings from the Mayan Sacred Feminine, is a love letter to women. Ixchel is the Mayan cosmic mother, and her messages in this book encourage women to open to their true beauty through simple rituals of self-love and self-care. Wise woman author Susan Weed says of this book, quote, "If you dare to read it, you will be swept up in an astonishing inner adventure that will empower you deeply." The words of the grandmother's song echo in Shauna's words, end quote. This is a beautiful book to gift yourself and the women you love. It's available on Amazon.com and my website, www.shaunahome.com. SHONAGHHOME.com. Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to eShell Wisdom Radio on the I'm Thankful Network. I'm Shauna Home, and we are talking about gluten intolerance with Dr. Tim Gerstmar. And we're going to return to our point. We were just discussing how the villi in the gut are affected by celiacs, and the villi is what enables you to absorb the nutrients of your food. So if you're not absorbing, oh my God.
Right, and that's why we see things like, that's that osteoporosis we talked about before. You're not getting your vitamins, minerals, proteins, nutrients. All of that is not coming in. And so it's important to know that, again, celiac is the most extreme manifestation of that. So, they can put a scope in. So, how they diagnose, traditionally how celiac disease is diagnosed is a colonoscopy with a biopsy. And so they'll look at the wall of the intestine and they can note the changes that happen. But it's important to know that's kind of looking at some of the end stage of celiac. Like, the disease taken to its most extreme is obviously the most easy to see. And part of that spectrum we're talking about is the fact that ideally we want to get it before that. Right. But not being able to absorb those nutrients, that's that osteoporosis, easy infections because you don't have all the nutrients you need for your immune system to function properly. Infertility issues, again, having to do a lot with nutrients and more, obviously. But so we see a lot of damage. So everywhere along the spectrum, we can see damage to the intestinal wall. And it's this concept we use a lot in the alternative community called leaky gut, if people have heard about it before. And the way to think about it is the wall of the intestine would be like a brick wall. The bricks themselves would be the cells lining the intestine, and the grout between the bricks would be the connections between the cells themselves. And so, for instance, we understand now there's a protein in wheat called zonulin. And what zonulin does is it actually decouples the cells from one another. So it would be like dissolving the grout between the cells themselves. And so that starts so normally, when you have an intact brick wall and all your grout is good and your bricks are fine, your grout is good, the only stuff that can get through from the inside of the intestine tube to the body itself is what the body wants to get through. But if you damage those cells, if you dissolve that grout, you create a situation known as leaky gut. And it's or increased intestinal permeability, if you want to throw around some bigger doctor words. And what it is things like bacteria, things like partially digested food are able to cross through from the digestive system into the body itself when they're not supposed to. Then, if you have celiac disease, those partially digested gluten fragments are acted upon and reacted on by the immune system, which triggers an attack. And so the immune system then goes into overdrive, attacking the intestines themselves, causing the flattening of that villi and the progressive damage that celiacs causes. In non-celiacs, we know the immune system will still react, but not in an autoimmune way, against that gluten and other foods. And this is kind of our understanding of the etiology of food, what are commonly called food allergies. We call them more food reactions because that's a topic of a whole nother show, of course. Big deal, but the body can react in many different ways to food.
Okay. I want to switch over just for a few minutes
Absolutely.
here. We have a guest in the studio, Nicole Allen, and Nicole is a friend of mine and a patient of Dr. Gerstmar's. And she has been dealing with a whole host of issues, one of them being gluten intolerance. And I just want her to just speak a bit to her experience, because she kind of went through the mire of conventional medicine and found Dr. Gerstmar. So Nicole, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually have been dealing with issues related to food intolerance and leaky gut for 6 or 7 years now. But in the beginning, I had absolutely no idea that food was in any way causing my problems. I was chronically sick, with colds, and I had gone through a period where I was having sinus infections that pretty much were never ending, or I'd have just brief respites. And I never associated that with allergies. In addition, I went through a period where at first I had just the sinus infections, then I began having infections in other parts of my body, yeast infections, and I was just constantly not feeling well, and I started getting migraines that were coming on more and more frequently, and my life was becoming pretty intolerable. I was a very active person, and I continued to be active, but I was sick all the time. And I went through a period where I actually got so sick I was starting to have a collapse occasionally, and I didn't know what was going on. So I was going in to see doctors, and they were testing me for all sorts of stuff, and nothing. There was never really anything that I tested for. Occasionally they'd see that my white blood cells were low. They could see that my immune system was weak, but that was about all that they were finding. And I just got very sick. Finally, I went to see my regular doctor, and I was telling her all about this, and we became friends. She came to my wedding because I went to see her so often. But she said, I sent some of my patients off to a naturopath, and I'm going to do that in your case because, and I've seen good results, and this could be food allergies. I thought that was the bizarrest thing at the time. But I agreed, and I went trotting off. And this was not Dr. Gerstmar at the time, but I went to see a naturopath, and she suggested I go on a diet that reduced a bunch of foods, including wheat. And I did not get instantly better, but after having gone off the foods, because I was so sick, I didn't have any reserves in my body, I think, to get better at the time. But when I tried to add the foods back in, I started having immediate reactions. I would get instant headaches, instant congestion in my body. A lot of those sinus infections were still infections, but they were being caused by a mucus reaction to the foods I was eating. I was so ill from the foods. And that kind of put me on the path of realizing that it was more than just a disease, that there was something going on in my body reacting to the foods. And it's been 6 years of investigating, because from there, at first, I stuck with conventional doctors. I went to a gastroenterologist, and they wanted to screen me for celiacs. And the gastroenterologist came out afterwards. He's like, "You're completely fine. You're completely healthy." And I said, "That can't be right," because I was so ill. And so I was really despairing. I said, "I know that when I eat wheat, I'm getting these headaches. I'm having these other problems. I'm feeling weak and lightheaded." And he said, "Well, I'm sorry." And I was seeing a doctor for my migraines, and I remember telling him that when I eat certain foods, I would get headaches. And he said, "No, absolutely, there's no connection. We know we have certain foods that are migraine causing, like wine, but you're telling me about other things, and this can't possibly be it." And I said, "No, really, I'm noticing this connection." I kept journals and diaries because I was really desperate to find out what was causing my sickness. And he just told me it was all in my head. Which it was.
Typical, yeah.
Yeah, that pain was in my head. So
yeah.
I've been through quite a lot. Eventually, I came to learn about nutrition through the Weston Price Foundation, actually. And I learned about how the way the food is prepared makes a difference. And I learned about leaky gut. And I found Dr. Gerstmar, who's been guiding me through various changes to my lifestyle and diet that are I am so different. I actually spent a year quarantined in my house back then. I was so sick. I couldn't go out because I got so ill. And now I'm actually I worked from home for 4 years. But I'm back at work for the first time. For a year now, I've been back, and I'm out doing normal things. I look like a normal person. No, I rarely get sick. It's amazing. My whole family, I've put us on this improved diet, and we haven't had a flu in the family in a couple years. And we don't get our vaccines.
Do flu vaccine,
right? No, it's just because we've all gotten stronger. We still have some health issues. I'm still working through things, but my immune system is far stronger than it was.
So how did you work with Dr. Gerstmar on this? What was the difference?
When I met Dr. Gerstmar, I was already doing a lot of diet things. So that piece I was already doing. But interestingly enough, since working with Gerstmar, my mother-in-law and my husband have gone completely gluten-free.
Ah, very good.
There have been some side benefits because that was causing their problems. In fact, my mother-in-law has both my mother-in-law and my husband have the autoimmune form of thyroid
Right, Hashimoto's.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, so they have Hashimoto's, and going gluten-free has started the process of reversing my mother-in-law's symptoms. With my husband, we think there's some more going on. We're still working with that. But she's already starting to have to reduce on her thyroid medication because she's become over-medicated because she no longer needs as much now that she's gone gluten-free. This has only been a couple months that she's doing this.
Very good. What are the foods that you have found healing for the gut with all of this?
I went through periods where I was eating so many avocados. I really craved fats because fats are absorbed differently. And back when I was unable, even now, don't digest carbohydrates as well. Like once my gut was compromised, a lot of foods became a problem for me. Difficult to digest foods are grains and starches. So by moving to a diet that was higher in healthy fats and protein allowed me to start to heal. So I still eat a very high fat diet.
So, and fats that include what kind of fats?
Shauna knows this.
I do, but I want to hear it from you, Nicole, because you're healing your gut with these.
This is true. I get tallow from grass-fed beef. I use grass-fed butter, raw butter. Any fat that I can get that's already part of the animal, basically, but from an animal that's been raised in healthy conditions. Obviously avocados, shrimp, anything that's naturally high fat and raised in a good way. I'm trying to eat that way.
And then also
nuts.
Cultured foods?
Absolutely. I do eat a lot of cultured foods. For a long time, I had to eat foods that were fermented, which I did this fermenting at home. Like I ferment nuts and make a nut milk that's fermented because I was so sick I couldn't digest foods. But if I fermented it in advance, then I was able to digest it better and get the nutrients. And we still eat. I mean, I make sauerkrauts and kimchi and ferment. I just had my beet kvass this morning, which is a fermented beet drink, and pickled beets the other night, and pickles, and just tons of stuff. That's how I prepare my veggies.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to eShell Wisdom on the I'm Thankful Network. My family has had cats for years, and every so often, the inevitable happens and one of them has an accident on the carpet. We all know how difficult it is to get rid of cat urine odors, but I have found the best product out there, Kids and Pets Stain and Odor Remover. Kids and Pets gets rid of urine odors permanently. It makes stains disappear, and it even works on the mattress if your child wets the bed. And what I love about Kids and Pets is that it's made entirely of enzymes, which means it's safe and non-toxic, no harmful chemicals, and it's a cruelty-free product. You can use Kids and Pets on carpets, fabric car seats, furniture, and your clothing. In fact, I was able to remove blue food coloring from a cotton blazer I thought I'd never wear again. Kids and Pets removed it easily. I am so glad I found this product because I am very careful about not bringing toxic chemical cleaners into my home. So try Kids and Pets for yourself. You will be thrilled. And look for them on Facebook. If you are ready to change your life in a truly profound way, then I invite you to meet Elisa Silling, founder of Awake in Joy. Elisa is a gifted healing practitioner here in the Seattle area. She is a life coach, hypnotherapist, and spiritual guide. Elisa can induct you into your highest potential, helping you to overcome personal limitations, fears, anxiety, and stress. Working with Elisa, you will align with your life's purpose. Clients have experienced greater clarity and a sense of personal empowerment that has helped them create abundance on every level. Awake in Joy offers personal healing sessions, classes, and retreats. Sessions may be in person or by phone. Are you ready for a personal transformation? Check out Elisa's website, www.awakenjoy.com. Dr. Tim Gerstmar, ND, of Aspire Natural Health in downtown Redmond, is not your average naturopathic doctor. Dr. Gerstmar provides his patients with competent and compassionate health care, which emphasizes disease prevention and high-level wellness. Restoration of health and balance is the goal in Dr. Gerstmar's practice. Patients receive a level of personal attention at each appointment that is unheard of in today's medical practices. Initial appointments run for 90 minutes, enabling Dr. Gerstmar to treat the whole patient, body, mind, and spirit. Schooled in the knowledge of real food and its healing effects on the body, Dr. Gerstmar endeavors to discover the cause of what's ailing his patients and correct the imbalance, incorporating healing foods, in addition to blending traditional healing techniques along with the latest diagnostics and treatments of modern medicine. Check out his website, aspirenaturalhealth.com, or call for an appointment at 425-202-7849. Hey everybody, welcome back. You're listening to eShell Wisdom Radio on the I'm Thankful Network. I'm your host, Shauna Home, and we are talking with Dr. Tim Gerstmar today and one of his patients, Nicole Allen, about gluten intolerance and everything that goes with that. And this is a huge topic, and we have very little time to discuss it. We could really take like 5 shows and really go into this very thoroughly. But I felt it was so important to just bring this up on a show and also discuss this with Dr. Gerstmar, because he's one of the few doctors out there who knows how to treat this. So Nicole was just talking about her experiences with this, and briefly, and some of the foods that she has been using to help heal her gut. And this is another thing that Dr. Gerstmar thoroughly understands, is the use of these healing foods and how they affect the gut to enhance healing. So let's just speak to how do you treat this, Dr. Gerstmar?
Sure. So the important thing, if you have celiac disease, you will need to avoid wheat forever. Very seriously, extremely strict about it. And, people hold out hope of genetic engineering or possibly drugs that will block some of these effects, and who knows exactly what the future will bring. But it's important to recognize if you have celiac, it means no gluten, never, ever.
Done. Period.
Basically.
At the end. Yeah.
Right. And that's the advice you're going to get from a conventional doctor. And then it's like, good luck. And we know, depending on the severity of damage to the intestinal tract, it can take anywhere from a few months to a few years for the person to recover again. And if you keep tracking them over time, their bone density will start increasing and they'll start putting on weight. If they tend to be underweight, a lot of these issues will resolve themselves over time. Now, most people don't want to wait a few years for these issues to resolve. So often we find a lot of shortcuts. So what people who are dealing with, and again, celiac most extreme, then we go through a spectrum of less extreme as you go down to people who say, well, when I avoid wheat, I feel better.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
Right. Not anything, it's big or it's an autoimmune disease. Nicole was talking about her mother-in-law with Hashimoto's. Again, we see, for a lot of people, if they're reactive to wheat, they get off wheat, and over a period of months, those autoimmune levels drop. Mm-hmm. And so we can see the disease halting itself. And then if there's enough left, if the body can, it'll repair it. And so if it's early enough in the process, people who are on, again, different show, people who are on a thyroid medication can then not need it anymore. It's a possibility. But let's talk about what to do. So obviously removing gluten from the diet. Mm-hmm. is a big piece of it. And then correcting nutritional deficiency. So a lot of people, it's this, whether it's the complete and total villus atrophy of severe celiac disease or just a more leaky gut situation caused by a more run-of-the-mill gluten intolerance, a lot of people are going to have nutrient deficiencies. And then, of course, you compound it, and I know you know this, by the poor quality of food that's available to most people in our society, which studies have shown again and again is more deficient in vitamins, minerals, and nutrients than ever before. Right.
Yeah.
So repleting those nutrient deficiencies, for Nicole, getting her immune system functioning better, a piece of that's getting it all of the nutrients that it needs to do its job. And so the first and most important place is about the diet and really focusing on that nutrient density in the diet. Grains themselves tend to be pretty nutrient poor. And, you alluded to earlier things like sprouting, soaking, and kind of the more traditional ways of preparing food certainly enhance the nutrient content of the grains. We haven't really touched on it, but there's this thing known phytic acid, which is fairly high in most grains, helps it actually binds up minerals and makes them less available. So both legumes and grains tend to have an abundance of this phytic acid, which means that the nutrients that are even in them are even less available to you. But things like sprouting, soaking, and the traditional preparations we see societies did before kind of our modern society destroyed most of that phytic acid and let the nutrients that are in the food be more available for people.
And much more digestible.
Right, and there's some question, the literature is unclear, but there's some suggestion that an extensive souring process like the sourdough for the sourdough starter for sourdough bread breaks down some of the gluten. The other piece that I recently discovered is supposedly, in Weston Price's book Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, he chronicles the Swiss and how they ate a great deal of bread and how they seemed to be healthy and didn't have any issues. We actually understand now from some other sources I've heard that they not only soured their starter, but once they baked the bread, they then set the bread aside and let it ferment even longer.
Right. So they weren't eating bread as we think of as bread.
Absolutely.
Completely different.
Right. And it's also important to understand, prevalence of celiac disease, broadly speaking, tends to go from the least in the Middle East, where we understand grains were introduced, to greatest in Northern Europe, where grains were some of the last to be introduced. And then the data that I've seen is a little bit conflicting on Asian populations. Some of the Asian populations, northern China and some of those areas, seem to eat a good deal of wheat, and some don't. So I'm a little less clear on prevalence in the Asian population, but as far as the Caucasian population goes, at least, we understand that it ranged from where gluten was introduced in the Middle East up through Northern Europe. And then, of course, parts of Africa, they used grains like millet and others as well. So the data is just not, the data is strongest on white people, unfortunately, because that's where most of the research has been done. We have a little less data on people of African origin, people of Middle Eastern origin. Okay, so avoiding gluten, eating nutrient-dense foods, and Nicole covered a lot of those. So we're looking at quality animal products, quality vegetable products, obviously.
Cultured fermented foods.
Plenty of cultured fermented foods. If you're going to eat other grains and legumes aside from wheat, rye, and barley, the primary gluten-containing grains, then you really should either take the time to properly prepare them or pay someone to properly prepare them for you.
It's very easy to soak them, and you can get that information on the Weston Price website, westonaprice.org.
Absolutely. And if you're not going to do that, then avoid it. It's
exactly.
Either the bottom line, either prepare it properly and reap the benefit, or don't eat it at all. So repleting those nutrient deficiencies, a big piece of it's the diet you're eating. I find supplementation to be useful, so quality supplements of various stripes and shades. A good multivitamin, often minerals like zinc and iron are going to be deficient, need to be repleted. It depends a little bit, of course, on the patient, but things like that. Getting in the good quality fats, obviously cod liver oils, fish oils, and other omega-3 rich fatty acids. The fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, typically very low in people, so that's a big issue for people. So getting all that nutrient repletion, because in order to repair the gut is highly metabolically active. It uses a lot of energy to do its job. To get all that energy, it needs the nutrients. So it needs the vitamins, the minerals, the proteins, the fats, and everything.
I've also heard aloe vera is very good for the gut. Is that true?
Absolutely. So there are a whole variety of herbs, commonly known as demulcents is the common name that we give them. Things like aloe. Of course, aloe has two parts. So the jelly inside is very soothing to the digestive tract. The green outer leaf is a tremendous cathartic, so it will give you huge amounts of diarrhea. So if you're preparing your own aloe vera, you would cut the leaf open and you would take the gel inside.
Or you can go to PCC.
You can, absolutely.
And you can buy the aloe jelly. Yeah.
Right. Also things like marshmallow, slippery elm are other herbs that are very soothing for the digestive tract. A variety of nutrients as well. So it really ends up being a comprehensive plan, but the idea is take out the irritant, give the body plenty of nutrients, and then you can use targeted, nutrients and herbs and other things to help heal the digestive tract and really cut down on that time from from months to years and really cut that down and get people thriving,
which is huge,
much faster.
Yeah, and that's what people need to understand. It does take time. It
Right.
took a while to get you there. It's going to take some time to heal and recover.
So the takeaway point, I want to give people today is the fact if you think you have celiac disease, any doctor can order that for you, that testing. You don't have to go to a naturopath or some far out different, like any MD has the ability to order celiac testing. Some are extremely skeptical and won't order the testing. So it's a matter of perseverance and finding a doctor who will order it for you. So that's celiac testing. And again, we could go into a few different varieties, but let's keep it simple. That's celiac testing. If you think you have an issue with gluten, do an avoidance.
Yeah.
You don't need to go anywhere to do it. Do an avoidance. And if you feel better, don't let anyone tell you that it's all in your head or that it's your imagination. If you feel better, you feel better. And it's something to continue. And definitely educate yourself on this issue. There's a lot of information available. We're just hoping to touch the surface and make people aware that this is a significant issue for a lot of people.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gerstmar. Thank you, Nicole. You can learn more about this. You can contact Dr. Gerstmar. His website is aspirenaturalhealth.com. And if you find him on Facebook, you look up Aspire Natural Health. He has great information via Facebook as well. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week. Ishel Wisdom Radio.
Thank you for tuning in to the I'm Thankful Radio Network. For more information about the show, hosts, and/or their guests, don't forget to log on to imthankful.com. That's imthankful.com.